It is not clear which form of Bhairava is there in that temple, because people say it's the Kaal Bhairava, they also say it's the Akash Bhairava, but there are also some other forms that are associated. So it is almost like different people associate different Bhairava forms with that deity. So I don't know, I'm really amazed with what kind of consecrations have happened over there. But the moment I entered and I looked at that, and I'm like, this is leeching all the thoughts of ghosts and arcane. What I associated with the word arcane, this was it. And that place is leeching those energies. And I'm like, see, from main temple is here, let me go there. I don't know what is here, but this has freaked me out. But then having fear for the deity is one thing, and getting overwhelmed by the deity is another thing, because if you experience the energies of a deity more, you're anyway going to get completely overwhelmed, because the deity's energies are at such a high level. So you have to prepare ourselves, we have to prepare ourselves for so many years with so much rigorous sadhana to be able to really behold a deity in their more truer forms. So then I spoke to some of my relatives and I said that, do we actually have Shiva in Jainism? Because there's the Bhairava demigod. And they were like, no, this is a completely different Bhairava. This is some person called Bhairava who did a lot of donations for a Jain temple, blah, blah, blah. And they said that's not Shiva at all, that's not even a demigod, it's just a human, and for some reason this iconography has been given to him, and I was like not at all convinced that cannot be the case. So this is a really long story. This is like a 10-year-old story of Kaal Bhairava that has been unfolding in my life, and I realized this all of a sudden the bubble broke in my head, and I'm like, whoa, this has been going on for 10 years, and that happened in Bhaktapur, the Bhairav temple in Bhaktapur. So this story, in my understanding, it starts with him, which is Sadhguru. Sometime way back, I think it was 2008 or 9 maybe, Isha Foundation released an album called Vairagya. You might know it if you are following Sadhguru, especially if you are following Sounds of Isha, because they recently, a year back or so, released another album called Vairagya Reprised. This basically is a set of chants, like 5 or 6 chants, and what Sadhguru had told us that time when the first album got released was that you just listen to all the chants a few times, and the one chant that catches you or grasps you, you just stick to it. And you keep listening to it again and again so that that chant sinks into your being and you should kind of become one with the chant. That was really fascinating, and then I listened to everything and all of the chants. Some of them didn't resonate with me at all. A couple of them did resonate. Brahmanand Swarupa, for example, that definitely resonated with me. The other one that resonated was Shambho. Now the Shambho chant did resonate a lot, but I was not able to relate to the voice that was singing it. I feel like if Sadhguru would have been singing it at that time, that would have had a completely different effect on me, which now in the new Vairagya Reprised album, it is Sadhguru's voice singing Shambho, and that's like, it impacted me in a very different way. Anyway, at that time in I think 2008-9, this none of the chants I could hold on to actually. I tried for a while, but nothing was sticking. And honestly, if you've tried it yourself, you might realize that unless there is a really deep connection with the chant, it does not stick. It is very difficult to just keep it on in your life like 24/7 types. It is very difficult. After how much of a dear the chant would be, after a few hours, you just want silence and quiet, it feels like it's intruding. So I couldn't stick to any of the chants, but in my mind, whatever Sadhguru had said, that take one chant was there with me, and so I was simply, and then they released this Kaal Bhairava ashtakam that was sung by at least one of the singers was a monk. I don't know the other singer. There are 2 singers, I think 2 main singers. At the time, I was not too conscious of what has happened. I just thought that, oh, this is a really nice chant. Let me try if this chant will stick to me. I didn't think much, because that instruction was from Sadhguru was there, and I didn't, very consciously, I did not think that he meant it only for those 5 chants. I just assumed that if there's any other chant also that we really like, we could just do the same thing, as in we could just listen to it 24/7 and have it just sink into us. That is how I think on a conscious level, the Bhairav and Kaal Bhairav journey started for me. Something was already there because of which I would have chosen the chant. It wouldn't have simply happened out of the blue, is what I realized now. But at that time, I didn't think much. I simply took the chant and I said, let me try what is there. So then I started listening to it, and I listened to it, and I listened to it. I don't know how much time, because that was a different zone. Because you see, I don't know if you have done it, if you've actually listened to a chant for 24/7. And obviously, you cannot listen for 24/7 because you're sleeping for at least like 5 hours every day. But apart from those 5 hours, every single moment I had the chant going on, literally every single moment, to the extent that I had a headphone, that plug-in headphone is what I had. I kept it on. Even when I'm working, most of my work was on the laptop, so I kept working. Even on a call, like if I was on a mobile call, I would have my mobile here, that on the other ear, one earphone would be here and the chant is playing in a soft volume. If I'm talking to someone, in one ear the chant is playing and I'm talking to them. If I'm going somewhere, the headphone is on. If I'm sleeping, when I went to sleep, I had the headphone on and I would start sleeping, and at some point I would sleep and the headphones would fall off. But until I am conscious, the headphone is on. When I woke up, I just plugged the headphone in right away. Like, even in that moment when I was in that blur zone where you've woken up but you're not fully alert, even in that zone, I would take the headphone, plug it in, and then the chant would play. Slowly the alertness will come up. So literally, except those few hours when I'm asleep and the consciousness is gone, except those few hours, the chant is on 24/7. I remember one of the times I was going somewhere and my cousins were there. We were in the taxi. I still had the chant going on. If someone's talking, I'm removing one and listening to them. And my cousin was curious and she actually listened and she cannot believe, what the hell am I listening to? And I also, it was a different zone. I was not consciously thinking what was going on. It's just I loved the chant and the chant just kept playing. And I think that kind of a 24/7, what Sadhguru said about the chant, letting that chant seep into you, something else happens over there. And to be honest, in your normal conscious mind, you won't allow any chant to do that. The only way you will allow that 24/7 chant, one chant, to go on and on is only if some kind of a meditative state. Minimum, you have to be in a meditative state, if not more. If you're not in a samadhi or something, at least you have to be in a meditative state, which is what I realize now. Because now if I try, even with the Shambho chant, which is resonating a lot with me in Sadhguru's voice, I cannot make it 24/7. So, I think that went on. So, I lost track of time. I did not know what was happening. So, at least 3 weeks that happened. I don't know if it went on for more. For all I know, it might have been 2-3 months. It just went on, and imagine, I was not even in the ashram. I was outside doing my life. And at that time, I was not even visiting Isha ashram because I had fought with some people there and I didn't want to go there. I was doing my daily practices and I had that chant going on and I was doing normal stuff. Normal friends. I wasn't even meeting my Isha meditator friends because I was bugged with all of them. So, you just cannot imagine. Thinking back, I just think that was such an amazing thing. And so naturally, at some point, because I was already solo traveling at that time, naturally I figured I should go to Kashi. Because that whole Kaal Bhairava ashtakam is all about Kashi. Kashi ke Puradinath Kaal Bhairava bhaje. So it's about the Kaal Bhairava of Kashi. So I said, let me go to Kashi. And then I planned my Kashi trip, and that was absolutely horrible because until then I had been solo traveling and I was going to these very travel destinations. So when you go to a religious place like Kashi, which is so chaotic, usually all the vendors and all, they want to talk to the head of the family, which is either the male head, usually the man. Even if it's a woman, it's an older woman, like a 50-year-old older woman they're expecting to talk to. I am like a kid. Maybe I was 26. Anyway, I was like a young girl. I looked very young. I was this English-speaking urban character. So I found Kashi very, very difficult. It was filthy, chaotic, massively chaotic. And I didn't know how to get anything done. I didn't know how to go and visit the Aarti. I didn't know where to get a pass from, how to enter. Most of these large temples had big lines. All of the lines had male people in it. So if I stood, sometimes they would come and touch. And I had gone there for Kaal Bhairava. As it happened, I went in some very, very hot months. And I even got skin rash. It was that hot. And I first visit to Kaal Bhairav temple, I happened to go during the Aarti time. And that could have been a good thing if I was inside during the Aarti, but I wasn't. I went there outside when the Aarti had already started. So the line had just become so long because they weren't allowing people inside. So it was not even a small line. It was a huge crowded line. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was standing there and most of them were men, 80% men. By the time I reached the gate after the Aarti was over and all the lines started going and I was like so flustered. It was hot. And I entered inside and the energies were too overwhelming, the energies. And the dog in the temple was absolutely beaten and injured and it was horrible. It was too much. So I got so overwhelmed. I went in and I did not even enter the Garbhagriha where I could see the Kaal Bhairava. I basically took a chakkar over there and I left. I couldn't take it. And then I went to the Manikarnika Ghat and I explored many things in Kashi, but I was extremely overwhelmed. I was also very, very overwhelmed with Kashi Vishwanath. I entered a couple of times and every time I entered, I lost my mind. See, I was still young that time. It took me many years to understand that when you go into a high energy place, the impact could be very different. Like it is not necessary that you'll enter and you'll understand this is a high energy place. Probably I was not ready for it, so I just kept getting very, very overwhelmed every time I went to these two temples. I went to some of the Devi temples which were much better. Like I went to Annapurna Devi, that's the Parvati temple just close to Vishwanath, and that was much better. I went to another very unknown Devi temple that is also better. There was a Panchakroshi Mata temple that was much better. That Kaal Bhairav visit was so overwhelming that I just left that temple. I never went there. Even though I was there for another 3 days or something in Kashi, I went to a bunch of temples. I never once thought of visiting the Kaal Bhairav temple. I closed that chapter in my mind. I said, I cannot. This is too much. I cannot. I kept researching more on so many different fronts. I first of all did a lot of deep research and found out all the ashtakam in Varanasi. That happened after I left Kashi, so I did not visit all these places. So I did all of that deep research, and to get that info, it was very tough, Either you have to search in Hindi on the internet or you have to really dig deep to get an English book, which I had to do at that time. So I finally found a book, an online version of a book, which then I read a little and all the details were given. And more details were given about all the rituals around Kashi Vishwanath and the Kaal Bhairava and all, which kept freaking me out. Because you see how almost innocently this whole Kaal Bhairava Bhakti of sorts, it started when I started listening to the ashtakam. And until then, my only exposure was Isha Foundation. And then even if I went to the Hindu temples, it was only to meditate. And my background is Jain, so I had no clue about all this Hindu stuff. So yeah, so that was the Kashi chapter. After that, what started was another story, because I realized that in Jains also they have a Bhairava. So I looked at the iconography of the Bhairava. It is obviously like a Shiva form. It has a trident, it has a damru of all things, and it's called Bhairava. So then I spoke to some of my relatives and I said that, do we actually have Shiva in Jainism? Because there's the Bhairava demigod. And they were like, no, this is a completely different Bhairava. This is some person called Bhairava who did a lot of donations for a Jain temple, blah, blah, blah. And they said that's not Shiva at all, that's not even a demigod, it's just a human, and for some reason this iconography has been given to him, and I was like not at all convinced that cannot be the case. So I did a lot of research. I wrote a whole blog on this Jain Bhairava, which is called Nakoda Bhairava, and I was like, dude, this is Shiva. This is like the most fierce form of Shiva is in Jains, and that's the most funny and amazing thing that is there. And a lot of my Jain relatives were really, a little bugged with me, like, what is this? Why are you associating us with Shiva and that to Bhairava of all things? And I am thinking the same thing. Why of all things the Shiva form in Jains is Bhairava? But so that whole thing happened. That story went on and finally it was confirmed this is Bhairava, and I will actually tell you because I visited this Bhairava also, this original Bhairava who is in the village of Rajasthan, and I will do a video on that. So look out for my Jain Bhairava videos, and that was fascinating. Because not only do they have this Bhairava form, they also have Kaal Bhairava, which is insane. Like Kaal Bhairava in Jains. Can you believe that? So that happened, but then in my mind, these two things were different. That whole Kashi Bhairava's episode happened, I put it to the side. And then this Jain Bhairava thing happened, and I didn't think much of it. And then every time if I hear of Bhairava, if there is a Bhairava temple, I ensure I visit it. By the time in Isha, they started this whole Kayantasthanam thingy. So Kaal Bhairava has been consecrated by Sadhguru. I think it's one of the milder consecrations. The main Kaal Bhairava consecration will come up in the future, which I am completely fascinated and really waiting for that. But I have visited the Isha crematoriums a lot. I have meditated in that Kaal Bhairava. I absolutely love the Kaal Bhairava with a shmashan nearby. I love it. I absolutely love it. And this iconography of Kaal Bhairava also I absolutely love, with this fire head. It's just so nice. It actually brings so much peace to my heart to see this form. Trip to Nepal happened, and I had identified all of these temples I wanted to visit, and I realized there are few powerful Bhairav temples. So obviously they were in my list amongst the other temples, all the Taleju Devi and Pashupatinath. Along with it, all the Ulmad Bhairav and Batuk Bhairav and everything was there. But there were a lot more Bhairavs than I had expected. There's so much Bhairav in Kathmandu and Nepal, and what happened in Nepal was a completely another level. I think something started opening up, and every time I started seeing these Bhairavas one after the other, there was so much bliss and thrill, and there was just so much joy, and what was happening at my energy level and my emotion level internally, it was just fantastic. Actually, I could not ignore it anymore. Couldn't keep thinking of it as just one more deity that I'm interested to see. It just became very, very fantastic. And then it was finally when I went to Bhaktapur, which was actually the last day of my trip. So I was already in a mindset that this trip is over. Let me just wrap up and, let me just see Bhaktapur, and then I'll move on. And even the last day of that trip was a complete blow, actually, because when I visited the Bhairav temple of Bhaktapur, which is a fantastic place, it is not clear which form of Bhairava is there in that temple, because people say it's the Kaal Bhairava, they also say it's the Akash Bhairava, but there are also some other forms that are associated. So it is almost like different people associate different Bhairava forms with that deity. So I don't know, I'm really amazed with what kind of consecrations have happened over there. Not just that, the deity over there, it takes the Bhairav form only on Saturdays and some other days. On other forms, it's actually in the Shiva form. They actually have a way of placing those murtis, the idols, in such a way so that if they place it in a certain place, it's Shiva. And if they place it in a different way, it's Bhairava. And there is the Vahana over there, which is Sri Betala, which I had never encountered. And oh my gosh, the Sri Betala's energies are, it's so insane, but I also love it. And those energies were completely overwhelming for me, especially because you see, when you enter that temple, on the right side, the Sri Betala shrine is there inside a place, so you don't know it is there. But the moment I entered and I looked at that, and I'm like, this is leeching all the thoughts of ghosts and arcane. What I associated with the word arcane, this was it. And that place is leeching those energies, and I'm like, see, from main temple is here, let me go there. I don't know what is here, but this has freaked me out. So then I went in and I went to the main temple, and already with that introduction of Betal, I was like totally freaked out. While I did my meditations and all, and the energies were, forget being palpable, they were definitely palpable, but something from inside and those energies were, something was happening, and all of a sudden that bubble broke in my head, and I remembered that whole episode that happened in Kashi, and I realized how strange to go to Kashi, how much I wanted to visit Kaal Bhairav, and when I went to visit, all of the situations culminated to make that situation so utterly overwhelming for me. And I did not feel that overwhelmed in the Annapurna temple or other temples. There were these two temples, Kaal Bhairav and Kashi Vishwanath. Kashi Vishwanath was at least better because I could go till the linga and take the darshan of the linga. Kaal Bhairava, I could not even go and see the Murti. I left. The moment I entered that main temple, not the Garbhagriha, just the temple door, I could not, my brains had gone haywire. I could not make rational decisions. Everything was haywire. Everything I saw there I've seen it in a blur and I have left because it's just not possible. So it just struck me how strange it was because I have visited powerful temples at that time. I had spent so much time in Dhyanalingam, and so how come it is, how come I had that kind of, so anyway, all of that came. Then I spoke to the Pujari also over there and I was telling him, and so yeah, he spoke many things to me that helped a lot. He told, we spoke about Bhairav being fearsome, and he said it's more fierce because there are some negative aspects in us or inappropriateness in us which he's trying to destroy. He's not, but to the good side of us, to the devotee, he is also protective. He's a great protection. So if you go that way as that proper devotee, there is no reason to be scared. But then having fear for the deity is one thing, and getting overwhelmed by the deity is another thing, because if you experience the energies of a deity more, you're anyway going to get completely overwhelmed because the deity's energies are at such a high level. So you have to prepare ourselves, we have to prepare ourselves for so many years with so much rigorous sadhana to be able to really behold a deity in their more truer forms. So somewhere what would happen is, if any spiritual, even a guru, a human guru, or even a deity, a consecrated deity, if we were to experience in a much deeper and a genuine way, we would get freaked out. But unless we really had a strict sadhana or some kind of thing going on, and then we are able to balance. So I understand all that currently. What I do not understand is I have not really consciously done any Bhairav Bhakti as such. Like the only thing I did was that Kaal Bhairava ashtakam I heard on loop. That also I did because Sadhguru said so, and because it was a Isha bhajan. Sadhguru had said that एक भजन पकड़ लो, तो मैंने बोला ठीक है ये अपील कर रहा है, इसको पकड़ लेते हैं, and I managed to catch hold of it, which is a big deal because it doesn't happen to all chants. You can't simply say that I like this chant, so I'll catch all. You may not be able to. So anyway, that is my Bhairav story. It's even now I understand that palpability because there's also so many other angles like Shani. Shani kept freaking me out in some way, and then I realized that Shani also has a Bhairav aspect to him, which is known as Shani Bhairava. And more than that, Shani is considered the student of Kaal Bhairava. So Kaal Bhairava in some form is a guru. So many angles are there, and I am just unveiling layers and layers of Bhairava energy there being in my life, which is impacting me. Every time I go to a temple, certain idols really impact me, and it's very often related to Bhairava. Not all the time related, at least in my understanding, but a lot of times. So clearly something is there. Little Kaal Bhairava statues, sometimes they are just put as a kshetrapal or something, and they attract me so much. It's not deniable anymore. I can't simply deny that attraction. Something is there over there. So that's all the long and short story of my Bhairava 10-year-old story, and now I've become aware of it. I'm wondering how to go about it. I could simply take up some Bhairav sadhana, but I am not comfortable because I need a transmission line. Like I know exactly from where that sadhana needs to come, which I need to accept from within. So if Sadhguru consecrates the Kaal Bhairav temple, then maybe from that line some sadhana will come up. But I don't know. Currently to hua nahi hai, so I am massively waiting for that to happen. But let's see as and when that happens. It's very fascinating for me that this whole Bhairav story, all the Bhairav temples I've been to and all of these experiences I've had have been outside, right? It's not been within Isha, it's been outside. And yet, this story has so much of Sadhguru in it. So it's helped me to kind of acknowledge this whole Bhairav thing taking place. I've started listening to the Bhairav Chalisa because I listen to a lot of Rajarshi Nandi, and finding out little informations of Bhairav, the Bhairav Tattva as he calls it, has really helped. Some pieces of information really, from within there's a response, like it means a lot to me. Not here, because logically there is no reason, I don't know what to do with that piece of information. From in the heart, it's like, oh my God, that piece of information is so important for me. So I catch hold of it. Similarly, he has already spoken about chanting some basic Bhairav mantra and all. I've not done any of it because I'm not comfortable with it. But when he mentioned that you can listen to Bhairav Chalisa, he has told openly in one of the Beer Bicep videos, and that I took. So I said, fine. So I listened to Bhairav Chalisa. It helps. It has been really good. So it's a fairly personal story. Why am I putting it out? I'm putting it out because of two reasons. One is because connections with deities happen not necessarily because we have done a very specific sadhana or something. You know my background that I'm coming from. I do mention so often, and yet this whole Bhairav experience is happening to me. Secondly, because this articulation may change the story in some way, and I want to see what happens. And I want to put out content about Kaal Bhairava and Bhairava Tattva because it means a lot to me. Since you watched so far, just letting you know that I have some premium content for members of this channel only. It is stuff that is too sensitive or specific and I'm not comfortable sharing in public. So if you are interested, do check out the membership tabs for all the exclusive content that I have out there.